name's Kevin Skinner, 35 years of age. I'm from Mayfield, Kentucky, and I play guitar and write songs.
Tomorrow never comes.
In 2009, a man walked onto one of the biggest stages in American television wearing blue jeans and a baseball cap, with the words "unemployed chicken catcher" displayed beneath his name. He picked up his guitar, started singing, and within about 30 seconds, had three of the toughest judges on television visibly emotional. He won the whole competition. The crowd loved him. The country embraced him. And then, within a few years, he was gone. Not just from television, but from public life entirely. In 2014, his family filed a missing person report. So what actually happened to Kevin Skinner after America's Got Talent? The full story is considerably more complicated than most people know. The $1 million prize that wasn't what it seemed. The night Kevin Skinner was announced as the winner of America's Got Talent, Season 4, September 16, 2009, the headline that went around the world was simple. A chicken catcher from Kentucky just won $1 million. What almost nobody reported, and what Kevin only came to fully understand in the weeks that followed, was that the $1 million wasn't quite what it sounded like. The prize was structured as an annuity, not a lump sum payment deposited into a bank account. An annuity paid out over 40 years, meaning Kevin was receiving roughly $25,000 per year before tax, not a life-changing windfall in one go. Winners who opted for an early lump sum received a significantly reduced amount after taxes and fees, estimated by financial analysts at around $300,000 total. For a man who had been working as a chicken catcher, a physically demanding overnight job that involved rounding up tens of thousands of birds in a single shift, even $300,000 represented more money than he had ever seen. But it was not the transformative fortune that the headline implied. And the expectations that came attached to being a $1 million winner were very much real, regardless of the actual payout structure. Kevin handled the immediate aftermath with the same unassuming decency that had made America fall for him in the first place. Before heading to Las Vegas for his headline show at Planet Hollywood Resort and Casino, hosted by Jerry Springer, he made a stop back home in Mayfield, Kentucky. He performed a free concert in the gymnasium of Graves County High School, the same county where he had grown up, for 6,000 people who came out to celebrate one of their own. It was the kind of gesture that told you exactly who Kevin Skinner was. He had just won a national television competition, had a Las Vegas show waiting for him, and his first instinct was to go back to his community and give them something for free. That detail matters, because it also tells you something about the gap between the world Kevin came from and the world he was now being asked to operate in. Nashville, Las Vegas, record labels, promotional strategies, media appearances, none of that was his natural terrain. He was a small-town Kentucky musician who had been playing guitar since he was 12 years old, writing his own songs, performing at local venues and open mic nights, and working overnight shifts catching chickens to keep the bills paid. The music industry he was about to enter had very different rules from anything he had ever navigated before. Before the spotlight, where Kevin actually came from. There is a version of Kevin Skinner's backstory that gets told quickly and then dropped, the chicken catcher with the big voice, but the actual depth of his musical background is worth understanding properly because it reframes everything that came after. Patrick Kevin Skinner was born on February 25, 1974 in McCracken County, Kentucky, and grew up in the Dublin community of Graves County, in the small city of Mayfield. His father, Joe Skinner, was a musician and a devoted fan of Hank Williams, the kind of household where country music wasn't background noise, it was a language. Kevin picked up a guitar at 12 years old and never really put it down. By his early teens, he was writing his own material, drawing from the landscapes and emotions of rural Kentucky in a way that felt entirely natural to him. By the time he was an adult, Kevin had been performing for years, playing open mic nights, small local venues, and occasionally making the trip to Nashville to try his luck at the Broken Spoke Cafe, and similar spots where original artists could get in front of a live audience. He wasn't an overnight discovery. He was a working musician who had been developing his craft for more than 2 decades before America's Got Talent gave him a national platform. He had also been married to his wife Kristen for over a decade by the time he auditioned, and the couple had 2 children together, a son and a daughter, both of them school-aged when Kevin stood in front of the AGT judges in August 2009. His audition song was not a random choice. He performed Garth Brooks's "If Tomorrow Never Comes," a song he had played for his late grandmother during her final years. The sentimental weight behind it was real, and it translated directly into the performance. Piers Morgan, Sharon Osbourne, and David Hasselhoff all voted yes immediately. The judges were sufficiently impressed that they skipped the Vegas round entirely and sent Kevin straight to the quarterfinals, a rare acknowledgement that what they had just seen was not typical. What made Kevin's journey through the competition unusual was how consistent he was. Each round, performing in front of a national television audience, he delivered. At the quarterfinals, he sang Bob Dylan's "Make You Feel My Love." At the semifinals, he performed Brenda Lee's "Always on My Mind," which drew a standing ovation from Piers Morgan, a judge not known for easy emotion. At the finals, he took on Aerosmith's "I Don't Want to Miss a Thing," backed by a full band. He beat out Barbara Padilla, Recycled Percussion, the Texas Tenors, and the Voices of Glory to take the title. For a man who had been catching chickens for a living, it was an almost surreal outcome. But for anyone who understood how long Kevin had been working at his music, it made complete sense. The brief window when everything seemed possible, the months immediately following Kevin's win, were genuinely exciting, and it is worth spending time there. Because this window is short, and understanding how much momentum he had makes what came after considerably harder to watch. Within weeks of the finale, Kevin was booked on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, where he performed "If Tomorrow Never Comes" for a national late-night audience on September 17, 2009. Shortly after, he appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and later on Live with Kelly and Ryan. These were not small platforms. These were the kinds of appearances that, for the right artist with the right team behind them, could have translated into sustained mainstream attention. He signed with Cypress Tree Records and began working on his debut album almost immediately. On March 17, 2010, St. Patrick's Day, a date Kevin chose deliberately because he shares his name with the saint, he released Long Ride. Every song on the album was written by Kevin himself. He had over 12 years of material to draw from, and he was determined that his first record would be entirely his own voice, his own words, his own stories. That instinct was admirable and entirely in keeping with who he was as an artist. The album received a warm reception from his fan base. People who had followed him through AGT bought it, listened to it, and responded to it the way they responded to Kevin himself, with genuine affection. A music video was filmed for the single "Like It's the Last Goodbye," directed by John Lloyd Miller, which accumulated over 1.4 million views in the years that followed. Garth Brooks, whose song had launched Kevin's journey on the show, sent him a signed photograph and a personal message after learning that Kevin had chosen "If Tomorrow Never Comes" as a tribute to his grandmother. That gesture, from one of the biggest names in country music, was a signal that the right people were paying attention. But attention and commercial traction are different things, and the machinery required to convert one into the other, sustained radio promotion, label investment, touring infrastructure, a proper marketing strategy, was either not there or not functioning effectively. Kevin's own assessment in interviews at the time was candid about it. He acknowledged that his primary means of communicating with his audience was through his Facebook page, and that he had assumed the album release itself would serve as its own promotion. In an industry as competitive and infrastructure-dependent as mainstream country music, that assumption was costly. When the industry and the personal collided, the second album arrived in early 2011, Kevin Skinner Live and Unplugged, and it found even less traction than the first. Ticket sales for live shows were thin. Radio play was minimal. The critical conversation around Kevin, to the extent there was one, had settled into a narrative that was difficult to escape. He was an exceptional interpreter of other people's songs, but his original material didn't have the commercial sharpness required to break through in the modern country market. Whether that assessment was fully fair is a separate question. What it did, practically, was close doors. Around the same time, his marriage to Kristen came to an end. The exact circumstances were disputed in various corners of the internet, with different accounts offering different explanations for what happened, but the outcome was clear. The relationship that had been the anchor of Kevin's personal life for more than a decade was over. He had 2 children. He had a music career that wasn't going the direction anyone had hoped. He had a prize that wasn't the windfall the public imagined. And he had a public identity built on a moment of triumph that was now several years in the past. By 2012, Kevin's social media presence had effectively gone quiet. His Facebook page, which had been his main channel of communication with fans, stopped being updated. He was no longer appearing in interviews or making public appearances in any consistent way. The man who had performed in front of millions on national television was retreating, steadily and quietly, back toward the private life he had come from. What was happening internally during this period is not something Kevin has spoken about in extensive detail publicly, but the picture that emerged from those who knew him was one of a man struggling under the combined weight of professional disappointment, a broken marriage, and the particular psychological burden that comes with having experienced a very public peak, and then watching the distance between that peak and your current reality widen with every passing month. The music industry has a way of making people feel the gap between where they were and where they are very acutely, and Kevin Skinner, a deeply private person by nature, a small-town Kentucky musician who had never wanted or expected fame of this magnitude, was not someone with the infrastructure around him to process that gracefully. The disappearance and what came after. In 2014, Kevin Skinner's family filed a missing person report with Kentucky authorities. He had sent a text message to family members saying he had fallen near his home and needed help. When they couldn't reach him after that message, they contacted the police. He was found safe after several days, but the circumstances that had led to the incident were serious. Reports at the time, and in the years since, have indicated that Kevin was battling significant depression in the aftermath of his divorce, and that his mental health had deteriorated substantially during the period following his withdrawal from public life. The missing person incident generated a brief wave of media attention, the kind that tends to be more prurient than compassionate, and then subsided just as quickly. Kevin was not in a position to address it publicly, and he didn't try to. What it did do was confirm, for the people who had been following his story from a distance, that this was not simply a case of a reality television winner choosing a quiet life. Something more difficult and more human was at play. In the years since 2014, Kevin has remained almost entirely out of public view. His last known music release was the live album from 2011. He has not signed with a new label, has not released new recordings publicly, and has not made media appearances in any sustained way. He returned to Mayfield, Kentucky, the town he grew up in, the town he went back to before his Las Vegas show to play a free concert for his community, and rebuilt a private life there. People in Mayfield have confirmed over the years that he is present in the community, that locals recognize him and treat him with the warmth and respect he earned in 2009, and that he appears to be living on his own terms. During the America's Got Talent 10-year anniversary special in 2015, Piers Morgan, the judge who had arguably been Kevin's most vocal champion throughout Season 4, the one who wept during Always on My Mind, and told Kevin he had the ability to move an audience in a way he had never witnessed on the show before, named Kevin Skinner as his single favorite act across the show's entire history. Kevin wasn't there to hear it, but the fact that Morgan said it, unprompted, a decade on, says something about the scale of what Kevin had actually achieved in those few months on television. The man behind the moment. The easiest way to tell Kevin Skinner's story is as a cautionary tale. A man who had his moment, couldn't sustain it, and disappeared. That version is neater. It also misses most of what is actually interesting about what happened to him. Kevin Skinner never wanted to be famous in the way that fame works in the entertainment industry. He wanted to be heard. Those are related desires, but they are not the same thing. He wanted to play his guitar and sing his songs and have people feel something when they listened. He had been doing that in Graves County and in Nashville's smaller venues for over 2 decades before AGT, and he had found genuine satisfaction in it. The show gave him an audience of millions. What it couldn't give him was the industrial support structure required to maintain a career at that level, or the personal resilience to absorb the losses that came when the industry moved on. The $1 million prize, parsed out over 40 years as an annuity, was never going to insulate him from the commercial pressures of the music business. The album deal with Cypress Tree Records, without robust promotional backing, was never going to break him into mainstream country radio. And the identity he had built his entire life around, a private man, a family man, a working-class Kentucky musician who caught chickens overnight and wrote songs about the things he knew, was never naturally compatible with the sustained performance of celebrity that a national television win requires. There is also something specific about the country music industry that is worth naming here. It is not a genre that rewards ambiguity or reinvention particularly well. It has a defined sound, a defined audience, and a very particular set of commercial expectations. Kevin's strength, raw, unpolished, emotional authenticity, is exactly what connects with a live audience in a gymnasium or a small club. It is considerably harder to package that quality for radio formats and streaming algorithms, which tend to reward a certain kind of polish that Kevin had never needed before and had no particular interest in developing. The industry wanted him to become something more marketable. Kevin, fundamentally, was not built for that negotiation. What Kevin Skinner actually did, which tends to get overlooked in accounts of his story, is something worth acknowledging clearly. He went back to Mayfield. He stayed close to his children. He survived a genuinely difficult period, the kind of period that has ended the lives of people with far more resources and support around them. And he is, by most accounts, still there, still present in the community that produced him, living a life that belongs to him rather than to anyone else's expectations. His AGT audition still lives on YouTube. where various uploads of the performance have collectively accumulated tens of millions of views. People still find it, still respond to it, still share it. A man in blue jeans and a baseball cap, playing a guitar, singing a song for his grandmother, in an industry that had no idea what to do with him. The performance itself was never the problem. It still holds up. It probably always will. Kevin Skinner walked away from $1 million spotlight to live quietly in the same Kentucky town he grew up in. And the question worth sitting with is whether that's a story about someone who lost everything or someone who figured out what actually mattered. Drop your take in the comments and tell us, do you think the music industry failed Kevin Skinner? Or did Kevin Skinner simply refuse to become someone he wasn't? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.